Hello and welcome, it's Deborah from Attic Lane, and today I want to share 3 cards that are word-based Christmas cards using some stamps from My Favourite Things. This card uses the words Merry and Bright from My Favourite Things Handwritten Holidays stamp set. I've got it inside my positioning tool and I'm inking it up with Versacolour ink. I'm going to do this a couple of times to make sure I get really good ink coverage. I'm sprinkling Nouveau white embossing powder all over my stamped image, and I'm going to heat set this from below and see if I can show you the transition on camera. So I'm heating up my heat tool until it's really hot before I bring it anywhere near my design. That way I should prevent the card from warping too much. You can see the shimmer there as it's set. This is a Versacolour ink pad called Atlantic. I'm using a dry baby wipe to take some of the ink from the pad, but then I'm rubbing off a lot of the excess onto my piece of waste white paper beside me before I add it to my design. I'm going straight over everything very softly, very gently, and gradually and slowly building up the layers and building up the colour until you can see the words in white below the blue. This is double-sided tape. I'm running a line across the top and the bottom of my card, and I'm snipping off the excess with my scissors. Once I remove the protective backing, I'm going to cover this line of tape with silver glitter. I'll rub off the excess with my fingers and I'll burnish it down with my thumb just to make sure I'm not going to have a whole load of glitter falling free. From white card, I've cut a number of snowflakes. These are from an MFT snowflake collection, and I will provide links at the bottom of this video to all of the things that I'm using today. I've cut out several and I'm layering them up before I add them to the top left and bottom right corners of my design. I'm using a sheet of paper from a My Favourite Things 6x6 paper pack called Roses All Over Pastels. I've chosen a colour that coordinates nicely with my Atlantic Blue Versacolour ink, and I've cut it to slightly smaller than my white base top folding card, and now I'm matting and layering the whole design. To complete my card, I'm using crystal drops in Ivory Seashell from Nouveau into the centre of my snowflakes, and with that my card is complete. In this card I'm using sentiments that say Merry Christmas, and I've taken a piece of paper from a Lawn Fawn nitpicky 6 inches by 6 inches petite paper pack. It's got some lovely festive designs in there. I'm using my stamp positioning tool because I want to ink this up with my Versacolour ink a couple of times to make sure I get a really good solid impression. I'm using a Nouveau red embossing powder, and I will provide links to all of the items that I'm using to make this card below the video, and I've heated up my gun quite hot before I've let it near the paper, and that way there's less risk that the paper will warp as you heat the embossing powder. Now I've used a green Copic marker because it will give a beautiful border to just a plain white piece of card, and that green border is just what I need to make the rest of my design really pop. And it pulls out the red and just makes the whole thing zing. So now that my topper design is complete, I'm going to add that to my white side folding card. And I'm really pleased with that finished design. I'm not going to add any further embellishment. For my next card, I'm taking the words fa la la from this stamp set. I nearly said fa la 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 la, but that would be too many lalas. And I'm using a very pale Chateau Grey Versacolour ink to ink up my stamp and then stamp onto a plain white piece of card. This is a very soft ink. It's a very soft grey colour, and I'm going to use this fa la la stamp to go all over the whole of that to create a lovely background. I'm going to use some Imagination Crafts paints, and I've moved on to my craft sheet because this has the potential to get a little bit messy, and I'm starting with one called Diamond, which gives a wonderful metallic-y grey silver finish. I'm going to cover over about 1/3 of this paper with each of those different colours because I want to give myself some colour options for when I do some die cutting. I'm cutting a selection of snowflakes from each of my different colours so that I have choices for when I layer them up. I'm just popping out the last of the metallic cuts. This is my background, and I'm just playing around with some different ways of layering up these snowflake stamps to see what will look best on my card. And when I'm happy with the layout, I'll glue a few into position and then I'll play around with where I want them on the background card. I've got a paper cornerizator. I've no idea what to call it, but it cuts out a nice little corner at the bottom of my card, and I'm using a lovely pale Versacolour ink to create a border around the bottom and the two sides of this card. And now I'm gluing up my fa la la top piece, which will sit on top of that border. I'm gathering my snowflakes, and I will faff around for a little time deciding on where to position those. And now I'm using some Tim Holtz sentiment words just to complete my card, and I'm snipping them to a better length that will fit in with the rest of my card. These are already adhesive back, so once I've snipped them, all I need to do is press them into position on my card. And when everything is glued down, my card is complete. Now I'm going to say thank you very much for watching, and I'm going to leave you with some close-ups of all 3 cards that I've made today. Please join me next time.